In the previous tutorials, we saw how to create a room and how to join that room. In this one, we'll be seeing how we can place some data in our room. So every time we join a room, we would like to have our left player name loaded and our right player name loaded as well. Also, when the room is full, that means we have the 1v1 players ready and we would like to have the start button enabled. Another thing we would like is when we try to join a room, if the room is already full, we should not be able to join it. So in our case, it's 1v1 game, and every time we have two players in our room and the third player tries to join, we should just send him an error message or some warning that the room is full and he cannot join. To do that, let's go to our server script. And the first place we would like to change, it will be every time we join or create a room, because in both requests we have the player join room method, which is sending to the player that joins or creates the room that he's joining the room successfully. Because as you remember, every time we create a room, we actually join it, so that's why we have the join room successful on both places. And the thing we would like here is to return how many players we have in this room currently. And to do that, the easiest way is let's just create a new variable here in our room model, and let's call it number of players. Let's give it a default value of 0, because every time we create the room, we don't have any players. And that's why we would like every time we join the room, we just say room.number of players plus plus. So every time we join the room, we increase this number of players with 1. Now we would like to have a maximum number of players as well. And if you have multiple type of games in your game, you can do it a bit more complex, but in our case, because it's 1v1, let's just place a new variable and call it maximum number of players and equals to 2. We can do a check over here if our room number of players is greater than our maximum number of players, then this means we cannot join this room. This is because every time we increment it on the top, so if the second player, let's say if the second player connects, then this will be number 2, the number of players will be 2, and that's why if the third player connects, it will be number of players 3, and we check if it's more than the maximum number of players. Now the next part will be to send the message or some state to our game to say if we have joined successfully or we have not joined successfully, if there was a warning for maximum numbers of players reached or something like that. In our case, it's a bit confusing maybe because the request itself, it's called join room successful, and the request will be successful, but maybe we would not be able to join the room. So if you want, you can rename this to only join room to not get confused, but I'll keep it just like this for now and use it as it is. The only thing we're going to change is inside of it, we would like to add another variable over here with some kind of state. So we actually know if the joining was successful or it was full. And to do that, maybe the easiest way is let's go to our tags, and if you would like, you can create a new class with different states, but as we have our tags, we can just create a new enumerator inside of it, and let's call it join room state. Now the couple of states we would like to have is success and room is full. Now let's go back to our networking data and create an integer of state. Let's pass it over here as well. And over here as well. It's just easier to send integer. That's why we put it like this. And now every time we come here, we can just place this over here and say join room successful dot state equals tags dot join room state dot room is full. And let's put it as an int and do an else statement, and else will be successful. So this way we can now distinguish if the user joined successfully or the room was full. Now let's build this. Go to our client side. Let's reload our OmniSharp. Inside the join room success, the thing we do here now is if we just need to check if the join room successful state equals, and we check the tags join room state is success. If we join successfully, then we direct it to the room. If not, we just output a message join room failed, room is full. Now the next part will be to actually receive some data from the server when we join that room. And to do that, let's just create a new networking data that will be room data success, and which we would like to return player 1 name, player 2 name, and just if the room is full, is room full. Now, usually, here we're returning data, and when we're sending data from the client to the server, we would like to tell the server which room we're getting data from. So we can do this by creating another request. Which will be just room data. And we'll be passing our room ID. So this will be sending, we'll be sending this from our client, and we will say we would like to get our room data from this room ID. Now let's go to our plugin and just get our request from here. Now what we would like to do is get all our players from that room. But currently, if we see our room model, we don't have access to our players. So what we can do here is just create a new variable of type list user, and call it users, and it will be just an empty list. So here what we would like to do is every time we join our room, which is over here, when we send a success message to the client, this means the room, we have joined that room. So we can just say room.users.add and then place our user in it. Now we have every user stored in our room object. The next part will be just to get our room. And as we previously know, we can do it like this. Room data, room ID. And now we have our room returned. If you have more than 2 players, you can maybe loop the room and do it some other way, but currently because we have only 1v1, we can just do the following. We can just check if user room.users.count is greater than 1. This means that both players are connected. Then we can just create a username 1 equals empty and username 2 equals empty. Now username 1, we can get our users, our user like this, dot username, and for username 2 it will be with index of 1. And if it's else, this means that our room has only 1 player. That means we are only feeding the username 1 player. Let's also add a boolean, which is room full, and keep it as false. And if it's greater than 1, that means that the room is full. Now the next part is to keep the users updated with that room data. It doesn't matter that we're sending our room data request only from the player who joined. We would like to retrieve this room data to get back this room data to every player inside that room. You can imagine if you have more than 2 players, it's even more necessary, something like that, because we would like every time someone joins or something changes in the room, every player to know about that. I mean, at least in our case, because we would like to keep the room up to date for everybody. To do that, let's create a new method, which will be something similar to our player join room. Just we would like to send a successful message, which will be room data success. And inside will be just sending our room data success. Let's just call it message here actually. And rename this. Let's create a new room data success over here, because this will be for the client. And we have message, so we can just rename it as a name. Now this part, as I mentioned, we're sending into every user, and we already know that we have our users in our user room list. So we just loop them, and let's create the message here, room data success, message equals new room data success, and pass to it, actually we do have message, so room data success, and pass to it player name 1, which is username 1, and player name 2, and this room full. This way, we just send it to everything to all the users inside the room. Now we can build. We can go to our client. Let's refresh the OmniSharp. Let's make a new tag over here, which is for our room data success. Keep in mind that we're getting the room data success when we're inside our room. And currently, if we go to our room, we don't have any scripts in it. So let's create a new script here. And let's call it only room data component. And inside it, first thing we would like to do is every time we join that room, this component will be loaded. So every time we go here in the start method, we would like to send the room data request to the server. So in order to do that, the first thing is to create a delegate, which will be just for sending our room data, which will have an ID, it will be the same as on join room. And the next part will be when we're receiving the data from the server. So let's just copy the on join room success and call it on room data success. Now go back to the room data component and let's access our global callbacks and set on room data. Now here we would like to have access as well to the room we have joined. The way we can do that is because we know our global callbacks are always available for us. We can just cheat things a little bit and you can place it somewhere else, but in our case it won't be a problem if it's here. We can just create a new variable and call it room ID. Let's keep it as 0. Of course it should be static, and this will be the room ID we have joined. Actually, let's keep it as -1 because we can have a room ID with 0. And if we have not joined any rooms, it will be -1. If we have joined a room, it will be the room ID. So now if we go to our networking manager and on room success, every time we join a room, we can place it over here, or we can do it over here. Just access the global callbacks, room ID, and make it equal to message.roomID. Now, every time we access the global callbacks room ID, we have access to the actual ID of the room we have joined. So when we go to our global callback set on room data, now we can access the room ID we would like to get data from. As we know, now here we have to create a new callback for our room data. And let's just copy this, because it will be very similar, just with an ID. Actually, we can copy the on join room click, because it's actually almost the same. Instead of join room, it's room data. Now we have our method that sends the request to the server, and we would like, when we're receiving this request, to use our other on room data success and pass the room data success message. Here we know that we have already, we would like to receive this in our room data component. So this is why we'll be creating callbacks in it. I didn't mention this, but as you can see, we have onAwake method. Let's actually keep it the same. OnAwake and onDestroy, we're doing everything inside of it with the delegates. Usually you can do it on start as well, but just to keep it the same, let's actually do it onAwake here. What I wanted to say is just it's not problem to do the delegates on start instead of onAwake. On room successful. What's next is we should just load this data that we're receiving to our room. So what we need is the two labels for the usernames, which we know that we're using TextMesh Pro. So let's include it. And the next thing is we need to set our button for start game to be able to be clickable if the both players have connected, if the room is full. So let's access it from the UI and create our user 1 and user 2. And let's create our button, start game. Now inside the method, when we receive the room data success, we can just say user1.text equals message player1 and user2 the same. Keep in mind, we will never get a null pointer of the player1 and player2 because every time it will return something, either be the username or empty. The next thing we can check is if it's room full, and if the room is full, we can just set the start game interactable to true. Before we continue, something we have missed inside our join room successful, we're missing the room ID here. So let's just add it, room ID. And also in the room data, instead of an update, it should be on destroy. Now, I think we're done with our code for this tutorial, but before that, if you remember last time when we started our game and we have multiple windows opened, we can only focus on one window and only the window that's focused will get updated. So if we want to run any data, if we want to show all the data that's changing in real time in the windows that are not focused, or if we imagine we have a game and we out-tab that game, we want it still to run. To do that, we can just go to, let's say, our create room, and on our awake method we can just place application run in background equals true. This tells our game that we want it to run in background. This way it only runs on PC, so don't confuse it. This will not help you for Android or any other mobile device, and it's on purpose because it's very heavy to be running on the mobile devices, so that's why it's only allowed on PC. Let's start our game. I have 3 windows. Let's enter some username and login. I would like to create our room over here on this window. So let's create test room 2. and created. As we can see, this window have created the room and joined it with the left player Harold. Now those two are updated, and let's join the room over here. As we can see, our start game has been enabled, and we have Harold and Adam as left and right player. Now if we go here on this one and we check our log, if we click on test room, we can see that our join room failed room is full. Well, as you can see, our game data is working, our room data is working. So that was it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe for more.